Hello, today we're in for a treat. We're going to be grading Amazing Spider-Man Annual, #1 from 1964. It's a great book. I got a great price on it, and I think it's got some room for improvement on it, so that's why I picked it up. I think a clean and a press could make this book maybe bump up a grade or two. But let's just go ahead and grade it based on what it looks like right now. Then we'll go on the computer afterwards and use my grading tool, and we'll see if there's any room for improvement and what grade we could expect maybe after a clean and press. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to look at is if there's any bindery issues. Now this is like a double-sized book. It's 72 pages versus the normal, I guess, 36. So, generally there's not going to be the same kind of bindery tears, and I don't see anything on this book. So for now, I don't see any off-centering or anything like that as well. So we're going to leave that blank for now here on our first row. If you look at my sheet here. And if you don't know what this is, I'll put a link in the description and above, so you can check that out. It's a tool that I came up with. It's a point-based system for grading comics and ballparking grades. So let's go ahead and look at the next thing we look at, which is corners. Now this book, you can see, has overlap. The interior of the book sticks out from the cover, so we have to peel back here. There's a sun shadow here along the top, but we'll cover that separately. But this corner is really sharp otherwise. You can see that. It's about as sharp as you'll see on a book this old. Same thing on the bottom. And I don't see any kind of significant blunting on these corners. These corners are pretty good. There's definitely some dinging there. I'd say we're... Let me just flip this thing over and we'll take a look at the back. Let me get another backing board here. I don't want to potentially cause any more damage to this book. So I use two boards here and we'll flip it over. Let's look at the back corners. Pretty sharp on the top. Same on the bottom. Same deal there on the spine. So we'll flip it back over. Okay, so on the corners, I'm going to go minor on those, because I think that's where we're at. Okay, and the next thing we're going to look at is the edges of the book. So we'll just go along the bottom here. Looks pretty good. Don't see any kind of... There's a tiny little tear right here. Very, very tiny. And along this edge looks phenomenal on this book here. It's really nice. And up top, there is a tear at the top here, I believe. If there is, I don't want to make it any worse than it already is. So let's see if I can just carefully open this cover. We'll see what happens. No, I think that's just some kind of color break right there. So we're good on that. Top edge looks really good. Except for that small tear on the bottom, I think we're looking pretty good on this edge so far. Maybe a tiny little ding there. Just a hairline little tear there. Okay, looks pretty good there. So one tiny little tear, what can we have with that? If it wasn't for that tear, I would definitely go probably in the tiny to minor range here, but I think we're going to have to go a little bit between minor and moderate. I don't think it's going to be good enough to go to moderate or high enough to go to moderate. So let's just add in these here, and that'll put us somewhere between minor and moderate. Okay, so let's look at the spine. So we got a little damage defect there. These spines don't bend easily, so spines stay pretty good shape on some of these double-sized books. There is some pretty bad crinkling right here. I'm going to call that part of the spine, because I think it's attached to the book, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the spine basically is attached to... This book doesn't open very easily, so I think it might be attached to the book up to here. I think the staple might be in this area. So I'm going to call that all part of the spine. So there's some significant crinkling right there. And I'm not sure how much that would clean up with a press anyway. But we're definitely beyond the moderate range. I'm going to say that's extensive right there. But overall, I mean, yeah, that's going to detract significantly from the book. So we got to go at least extensive on that. I might even go between extensive and major on that. Although it's not torn or anything like that. There's some staining there on the spine. Yeah, I'm going to at least go extensive on that. We're going to go extensive, but a little bit beyond extensive. I'm going to put some minor. I'm going to add a couple more ticks here just to get us up between extensive and major. And we'll reality check that on the computer when we're looking at it. So staples. Now the staples are embedded in this. I think they're underneath in this book, underneath the cover. I don't think they're anywhere to be seen. And I don't know that I could even access these staples. And I don't want to risk damaging the book. So what's the midpoint going to be? About page 36? And I definitely don't want a chance. I'm peeling back very carefully here. Let's turn it this way. Yeah. The way these staples are on this book, I think that what it is they're under the cover here. And they're through the book. Okay, I can see them there. Let's turn it this way very carefully. All right. Okay, so I figured it out. It's kind of like Giant Size X-Men, I think. It's been a while since I've held that book. So here's the staples. I don't see any kind of major discoloration or anything. No rusting. They're into the book there. It's almost like this book had some weight on it at some point and it's pushed down on the staple. So they're pushed into the book. But they're firmly attached, that's for sure. So I would say, based on that, it's hard to say. I don't know. It's kind of tough for me to know how that would be graded. It's definitely not extensive. Would being pushed into the book like that make it moderate? Or would it make it more minor? I'm going to err on the side of moderate on that. Although I think that could be an area that I could be wrong on. But I'm going to err on the side of caution and call that moderate on the staples. Okay, now the biggest thing this book has going against it is this cover here. I don't know if you can see it in the light. It's significantly crinkled here. It's wrinkly. It's almost like it sat out in the heat for a long time. There is some tanning. There's some minor possible staining here and foxing on this cover. So the cover is the worst part of this book, although it still is intact and presents decently. But I would say this is going to get us in the low grade territory. Either low mid-grade or upper low grade. But I'm going to get this pen away from this book. What the heck am I doing? I think the crinkling of this cover is going to get us more, at least in the extensive realm. I'm going to call that major. Yeah, it being right here in the middle of the book, along with this here, although we did include some of that in the spine. There's some color breaks, like maybe that could even be a tape pull there. It's like I bet this book was in the sun for a while and it got really baked and hot and then just kind of cracked. But it's hard to really say. I'm just going to go major on the cover. I mean, I can't go anywhere beyond that, so I'm going to err on the safe side. That could just be seen as extensive or between extensive and major. However, I think this, if we could get rid of all this crinkling and clean this up here, and all that was left was like the foxing and the staining and everything, and this was a nice smooth cover. You know, it does have this sun shadow here, dust shadow, so that's why I think it was heat or sun. You can almost see how it's burned through the cover here. So if I think all of the actual crinkles, or 80% of those are cleaned up, and this was a nice flat laying book, just with these color breaks here, I think we could get it down to between moderate and extensive. So I'm gonna make a mark here just to remind myself. Okay, so now we have the pages. So this is the fun part. For you, those of you out here that have not read this book, I'm just going to go through this book as carefully as possible. And if you want to fast forward this part, you can. But we'll go ahead and just thumb through this book, because this is an awesome book. I really like this book. And so there's a reason it's very popular. And you'll see toward the end what. It's okay, so there's a chipping out of the corner here. So that's getting us at least a moderate on the pages. That's unfortunate. I think it's only on the first page. Of course, if it's readable, if you're able to read this, you can just pause the video. I'll try and get an angle where I can see most of the words, but I definitely don't want to pull in here. I'm just going to carefully turn these pages. I can't get that one up, so yeah. I think this might be the next page. We're definitely off-white to white pages, I believe. Good old Aunt May. J. Jonah, Dr. Doc Ock. The Wasp is over there too. Man, who's not in this book? Like everybody's in this book. Vulture. Yeah, Sinister Six, that's the big thing about this book is I'm not sure where they exactly are in the lore of Marvel Comics. I don't know, is that the first team of villains? I'm not sure. Somebody in the comments let me know where Sinister Six sits and everything. Because I haven't read this since I was, well, I never read this as a kid. But I haven't been up on the story since I was a kid. And this was a little before my time, so that's a great shot over here. This on the left side, that's pretty cool artwork there. Iron Man? I'm guessing that's Kraven. Yeah, Kraven. Actually just had the Death of Kraven graded. Spider-Man 294. I got a 9.6 on it. Human Torch. I might have went too fast on that one with my hand in the way. X-Men. Mysterio, I forgot he was in this. That's pretty sweet. Sandman. Yeah, this inside of this book is very, very readable. This is a nice, very nice book on the interior. This looks like it could be an 8.0 plus on the interior. Very nice battle here. Cool underwater stuff. It's good to thumb through this one because if I decide to slab this one, we'd have the story here for posterity documented and what the inside of this book does look like for future potential buyer of this book if I decide to sell it, which I might. So this is the part of the book where we get this gallery of villains, and I think it's mostly villains in the back here. I forget, but we're going to go through it here. So we got the Burglar from Amazing Fantasy 15. That's pretty awesome right there, that picture. Look at this drawing right here. That guy look any nastier than that? That's pretty sweet. And the Chameleon. Yeah, this might be part of what makes this book so valuable is these profiles of these. And also in this book, I believe we're going to have potentially it's going to talk about Spider-Man's gadgets and how they work. The Vulture. The Terrible Tinkerer. How many Amazing Spider-Men were out when this book came out? I forget. Was there 10? Doc Ock here. Sandman profiles. Pretty cool. Also a little bit of origins on all of them. There's Doctor Doom. Yeah, Marvel Superheroes. Secret Wars. Check out book 10. And of course the Lizard. The Living Brain. Number 8. Forgotten about that guy. For that machine. The Enforcers, book 10. Yep, book 10. That's a great book. I have a compendium with all these, I think 1 to 20, so that's how I know all these stories, not because I've actually owned these. I do have one of these, though, coming up. Green Goblin. This one I want. I've got number 40 in a fairly high grade. And Kraven, of course. I want to get this one to go along 15 with my 294. The Secrets of Spider-Man. Imagine being a kid in the mid-60s when this one came out. It's an awesome book here. I mean, awesome part of this book. So yeah, it talks about the gadgets. I mean, this is kind of the origin. It talks about his strength, Avengers, Fantastic Four there. What he can do. See if I can get all this in there. And start here for Spidey's live action or living action demonstration. Wow. Did I follow that right? Yeah, and here we talk about the gadgets. I'm not sure. This book is just packed with stuff. Good stuff. Talks about what the webs can do, what you can do with it. Oh, wow. Look at that. That's nice. Spidey senses. And how those powers work. The extent of those powers. The secret of Spider-Man's mask. Nice. Showing a little bit of the scientist side of Peter Parker. This is nice here, this little pen up here. I bet this was removed from the book sometimes. Glad it wasn't from this one. Oh, and that's going to do a little profile of some classmates. Miss Brandt. Peter Parker's house. That's pretty cool. The guest star page. How Stan Lee and Steve Ditko create Spider-Man. That's funny. Last page. Look how white that is. That's pretty nice. Got some tanning up here, but pretty nice for an old book like this. All right. While we're here, we'll look at the back cover. I don't think we're going to get off of our major, but it is pretty. It's got some whiteness to it. It definitely has this damage to it. I'm not sure what's causing that. Yep. Okay. So, pages. Remember we saw that one corner missing, so we're going to go to modern on the pages. But overall, though, everything else is minor. Not even minor on the pages. This book is really nice. Okay. So, we've got that part of the evaluation done. Now we'll go on the computer. And we will do our final evaluation on it. And see where we're at. Alright, so now that I have this safely bagged away, before we go on the computer, I just want to real quick ballpark the grade. I like to do that. What do I think this book is? I think this cover's capping us. I think the amount of color breaks on it, and this crinkling, and the staining, and all that stuff, that's capping us on this book. And I want to think that the absolute cap with this cover would probably be like a 5.0. Maybe a 5.5. So I'm thinking that's the starting point. Now we need to deduct for other things. Overall, otherwise, this book, everything else on this book could certainly be in a 5.0. I don't think this is a 5.0, though. I think if I was to send this in as is, we'd be more in the... I really think we'd be more in the 3.5 range. With this cover the way it is, I think there's just no way you can get beyond this cover. There's no way this cover could be a 5. There's no way it could be a 4.5. 4 would be a stretch in this. But I think 3.5 to 4. Certainly in this book, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 3. Somewhere between 3 and 4. I hate to be that general, but there are some like unknowns for me on this book, and I just don't know enough about it. So I'm going to say I'm somewhere between 3.0 to 4.0. And I think after a press and a clean, if they can get all these wrinkles out, clean up the spine, and maybe get some of the, if there's soiling, I'm not sure how much of that would be soiling on the front or back. I'm thinking this could certainly be a 5.0 book. I think 4.5, I would be extremely happy with a 4 in this book, but 4.5 to 5 after clean and press. Once again, I can't be specific because I just don't know. But you know what? I'd be happy with this book on a 2.0. Yeah, I mean, look at it. It's one of the greatest books ever here for Spider-Man. So it's kind of a grail, right? Maybe a minor grail, maybe not even that minor. I don't know what a 9.8 of this or a 9.6 or super high grade. I'll look that up and we'll see, but I'm pretty sure this is a pricey book in high grade. Okay, so we'll switch on over to the computer now. Alright, so we're here on our grading tool. On the left-hand side, we'll put in the values that we had assessed upstairs while physically grading the book. And on the right, we'll then take those values, transfer them over, and see potentially what this book might look like after a press. And then we can decide whether it's even worth a clean and press on this book. So let's just go ahead and enter the values. You can see, follow along on the left-hand side here where I have the book and the grading sheet right below it. So for Bindery, we didn't have anything. For corners, we had minor, so we'll just put that. Edges, we had somewhere between minor and moderate, so we'll do exactly what we do on the sheet. And for spine, we had somewhere between extensive and major. I believe that's right. For staples, we had moderate. For the cover, we had major. And for the pages, we had moderate. Okay. So let's just make sure I did everything right here. So corners, minor. Making sure we didn't miss anything because there was a lot to click on this one. Okay, the one thing that now that I'm sitting here that I kind of maybe I'm not sure about is the corners on this book. I actually think minor might be a stretch. There were some pretty sharp corners, but I think the actual inside of the book is a lot of the corner on this book. In other words, the inside extends past the pages and they're pretty dinged. So I think somewhere between moderate and minor, or maybe even moderate, might be more accurate on this book. Let's just err on the side. Let's just meet in the middle there. We'll just say that. Although I think moderate might be more likely. So let's see what grade we had thought this book would be. We thought this book would be somewhere between a 3.0 and 4. See, there's a lot of gray area on this book. How harshly will they grade the cover based on these few color breaks? How harshly are they grading the crinkles? Obviously, we can't go any higher than major. But what about the staple issue? Is that a separate issue? Is that part of the cover? On a double issue like this, how is that graded? I'm just not sure. So that's why I just am not going to be 100% confident in this score. I really do not know how accurate this would be. This says we'll be at the top end of my 3.0 to 4.0, but I tend to think this is more of a 3.0 book right now. I just think it's actually somewhere even beyond major on this cover. I think maybe the staples could be graded more harshly. You know, it doesn't take much, to get us there. There's a lot of question marks on this book. This is a hard one for me to grade. It might be a hard one for anybody to grade. But let's just say we are at this 4.0 here. And let me take that back off. And let's just transfer our values over to this side and then kind of recalibrate here. What's the potential of this book? That might be easier to calibrate than the current grade of it, because we know which defects potentially can be corrected on this book. Corners, there's nothing we do about. Edges, there's not much we can do. It's not like it's a bent over edge without color break or anything like that. The spine, I think, can be tremendously improved on this book. I think the way those staples are into the spine like that, there's no real tears there or anything. It's just major denting, like something's been said on this book, kind of looks like. But I think a good presser can clean up a lot of that. So I think we could actually go from extensive to at least moderate on this spine. If not better. But we'll just stick with this, just err on the side of caution and say they get it to moderate. Staples, I think that's one of those things that can be improved on this book. The way because I kind of balanced out whether this would be a staple issue or a spine issue, because we could have just gone major spine and then minor staples, or we could have gone major staples and like moderate or minor spine, but we just kind of balanced it out there because I just wasn't sure. But I think staples would be part of that improvement, so we'll just say we go minor on the staples. Cover, there's room for a lot of improvement on the cover, I think. I know there's some color breaks there. There's nothing we can do that might cap us, but I think we can get rid of a vast majority of those crinkles, and possibly even get down to a between moderate and extensive cover. But let's just say we got it to extensive. Pages, there's really nothing we can do. It wasn't like this book was wrinkled up inside or anything like that. So according to this, a 6.0 could be possible on this book. The only problem is I think we might run into some caps. And what I mean by that is if you'll look at the chart on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see where the scores are on the left, and then there's like maximums along the top here in columns. So we can look like maximum creases, tears, stains, moisture, all that stuff. This book didn't have a lot of tears. It did have a small little piece missing off the first page, I believe. That's going to cap us at like 7.0, so we're good there. Foxing, there is some foxing on this book. And I would say it's probably medium foxing. So we're still good on a 6.5 or a 7 there. All the way up actually to an 8.5 on medium foxing. Even if it was heavy foxing, a 5.5 would be doable. And a 6.0 even. So that's not really an issue. Staples are fine, they look fine. There's a tiny little discoloration maybe, but they look good. There's no rust or anything. Paper color, I believe we were off-white, and we're definitely good there because you can have off-white all the way to 9.8. Even if this was a cream, we're good. Okay, so let's think about the creases in it. If you just look at the cover there's some creases around Spider-Man on the top left. There's some on the bottom left there. I'd have to get the book back in front of me, but I'm thinking there's a good, let's just try to put a number on it. How many inches of creases are on this book? So I see at least a half there and probably a quarter there, so that's 0.75. Accumulate the stuff on the top left, you're probably at over an inch, inch and a half. I'm thinking we're around probably north of 2 inches of color breaking creases on this book. Even if they're not technically creases anymore, they're still there. They're still technically creases because there's color break. So I'm thinking we are probably in the 3 to 4. I'm going to err on let's say we have 4 inches of creases on this book if you totaled everything up. What is that going to cap us out at? Okay, so you can get a 6.5 with 6 inches of creases. So this 6.0 is actually possible even with all those color breaks on the cover. Now if they weight it because it's in a bad spot on the cover or just because it's on the front cover, I'm not sure how these graders work, honestly. I really don't know. I don't know, but I think 6.0 might be doable on this book. Now I'm a realist. I just don't know what's going to happen. There's a huge range of things that could happen in this book. So what I'm going to say here, I'm going to be very cautious here. I actually think this book at most could be a 5.0. I really do. I would love to see a 6.0, but this is a 5.0 book after press. There's going to be some stains. I forgot to talk about that. You could call some of that stuff on the spine and up top staining. Could be the one here. So I would say you could say maybe there's even a quarter cover if you accumulated. Maybe like an eighth of a cover. What would that be? 4 quarters sound about right if I'm looking at this right. But once again, 4 quarters caps us at 6.0, but I think they might accumulate that and say some is staining, some is foxing, let's just err on the side. So I think quarter cover could be what they go with. So that's kind of why I think 5.0 might be the cap here. I could see a harsh grader just capping us at 4.0 here because of that. I'm just not sure. I really don't know. So I'm going to be broad with this. I'm going to use a broad brush. I'm going to say that this book is currently a 3.0 as it sits. And I'm going to say that it's got an outside chance of a 5.0. But I think this book is going to be a 4.0 to a 4.5 after press. So I'm going to write that down once we get down here. I'm going to update everything, and that's going to be when we get this book back, we'll be able to reassess and check out what we did here and see how accurate what we're doing is, or whether we need to fudge one way or the other based on this. Like if this book came back something crazy like a 6.5 or something ridiculous, we'd be like, what? Was this presser just amazing and got all this stuff out? If that's the case, we can look at that. Or is our tool off? Or are we just way underrepresenting or over-representing what defects can do to a book? Or maybe on the other spectrum, this book comes back a 2.0 and we're like, oh crap. You know, we're gonna have to go the other direction with it. So anyway, if you want to learn more about this tool, I put a link in the description and I'll put one above as well. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Happy collecting.